No problem. Thanks so much, Khalid. I understand. All right. Evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to our executive committee meeting. It is February 23rd at 6:44 p.m. My name is Xavier Santiago. I'm the chair of this committee and Community Board 11, officially calling this meeting to order. Tonight, we're joined by our Assistant District Manager, Khalid Nixon. Before we jump in to the meeting, a few ground rules. One, no one may speak till granted the floor. Two, CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise your hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. 3, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. 4, when a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you may unmute yourself so that you may speak. 5, please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. 6, members of the public can register to speak in the public session by completing the pre-registration form and providing their name, affiliation, and well, sorry, that's for full board. Okay, with that, we're going to call the roll.
Is that my job here, by the way? Just wanted to confirm.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Give me 1 second to pull it up.
No problem.
Looks like a second.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time. I feel like there's got to be a way I can make this a Southwest Airlines version of all the read instructions.
No, it's all right. I mean, like I have the tabs ready. It's just I didn't know the roles. That's all. Okay, I'm ready to call the roll.
Please.
Jose Altamirano. Stephanie Arroyo. I think excused. Adem Brihal. On his way. Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Thank you. David Giordano.
Present.
Thank you. John Green.
Here.
Thank you. Marissa Mack, I think is on her way, as you said.
She is the one ending 040, the 917 she dialed in. That's
she's dialed. Okay, perfect. So I'll allow her to talk.
Okay, great.
Marissa, can you confirm your attendance, please?
How do you unmute, Khalid? And the instructions is star.
Oh,
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa. Okay, Nilsa Orama.
Present.
Thank you. Xavier Santiago.
Present.
Thank you. Isaac Scott.
Present.
Thank you. Jason Villanueva. He's here yet. And Michelle Wilshire Clement, you said is excused for the evening. So it looks like you have quorum. It looks like you have quorum right now, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, everyone. Okay, let me go back here. Okay. Bear with me. Okay. All right. The agenda was circulated in advance. There are 2 agenda items that I've added to it, and that will be after our discussion about the budget. Stand by real quick. Which will be a discussion after the statement on mayor's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024 is item C. I've added to it is a possible meeting in person of our executive committee to reconnect and just be able to hash things out in person, face to face, and refamiliarize ourselves in the event that they do not extend the executive order. So we're not caught flat-footed, but also think there's a lot of value in being together in the same space. But that's just a discussion at the end. And one additional item is we're going to have a presentation from the Independent Redistricting Commission as it comes to our assembly seats. They were invited after Borough Board on Thursday to come to full board, but she didn't respond in time to get it onto the agenda. So I've added those 2 additional items because I think it's very important that we convey that information to the public. With those 2 additional items, if there's no objection to adopting the agenda, if there is an objection, please raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. The minutes from the last executive committee meeting were distributed to all of our committee members ahead of the time by the board office. If there's no objection, we'll adopt the minutes from that meeting. Board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing none. All right. Wonderful. We'll move things along. Okay, announcements. On February 19th, Mayor Adams extended the emergency executive order for an additional 30 days through March 21st. And if you look at the calendar, it is already up. That will bring us to, hold on just 2 seconds. If you've looked at the calendar, which I highly recommend, that would put our full board on the 21st of, no, 21st. Yep, it put our full board on the 28th. So we will have to take that under consideration and discussion. Economic development will be on the 21st. Executive will be on the 16th, given the way the calendar falls. So just that bit of information. Great. We can move to the next slide, please.
Oh, wait, Xavier, I'm sorry. I thought that Echo was going to be on the 15th. I had discussed with Angel. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, he'll be back next Monday, but let's definitely confirm that.
Yeah.
And we,
Thank you.
tell us to move to the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So if that's the case and she's able to move it to the 15th for EchoDev, brilliant. Then we can pop up full board and that'll be virtual then. So thank you very much. All right. Next slide. Any informational updates? Please, don't see any hands raised. Next slide. Okay, committee discussions, establishing a practice for committee issuance of letters of support, et cetera, and so on. Just one of the things that we had, and I'm glad Nils is here as our former chair, that we had started instituting is giving ourselves a pause for contemplation. And I think two committees that really did this early on were Environment, Open Space and Parks, and Public Safety and Transportation when it came to, say, street renamings or adopting DOT positions and parks. I mean, I'm going to hand it off to Jessica in just a moment and have her speak about her work, not just about when they issue letters of support, but their workflow process as it pertains to how she works with her vice chair, how she works with her staff liaison, and better ways we can create an environment of producing results, giving us time to do our due diligence, and hopefully create a more productive workflow for our board. And again, it's about enshrining best habits. We've been consistent on certain committees, and it's no judgment one way or another. I think we are doing a great job, and I think that it's just about us reaffirming that process and learning from one another. So, Jessica, I'm going to pass it over to you. And if I could ask everyone, if you could, the other thing we do want to talk about is just trying to be on camera a little bit more. A lot of the board members are really wanting to see our bright and shiny faces. You know, even when I look like death warmed over. So please, if you can, if you're in a position where you can to put on your cameras, it's great, because then we get to get some of that feedback. Because all we're looking at are squares. It's not the same as we're all sitting around the table. So I'd really appreciate that if you're capable of. So Jessica, please kick us off.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. Yeah, just as Xavier said, we just thought it might be a good idea to walk through standard procedures for committee chairs. And I'm just going to share with you what we do on the Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee in case it might help anyone else with their committees and processes. So beginning with the agenda planning, when an email comes into your chair email address, if it's an agenda item, potentially, I will go ahead and add it to the agenda planning document. And we all know where the agenda planning document is. So I can share my screen and show you that if that would be helpful. Let me do that. All right, can you see my screen? Okay, great. All right, so chairs should really be reviewing emails that come in and responding to the requests for items of the agenda. It shouldn't just be relying fully on the staff. And I think as a general note, I think the staff is they're doing a great job, and they're pulling a lot of additional weight for all of the board members across the board. So whatever we can do to help support them and do our legwork so that they can do their jobs efficiently will be helpful. So, these items here, we have every month. So ideally before, we even get to the month of March, we're we're filling in the things that have come in via email on our own as chairs. So these were the 2 items that came in. We pass this over to land use. Sorry, land use, is it's more of a ULURP item. So, having this prepared gives us the opportunity to have a productive and quick call ahead of the meeting with the staff liaison. So Khalid and Malik and I set up a meeting typically at the very least 1 week ahead of the meeting. So we pull this up, we look at the items that are on there. The agenda is drafted with these items. So ideally, we're just looking at the agenda saying, yeah, this all looks good. And then we're sending it out. So also, letters of support and drafts of any action items should be drafted and ready to go with the agenda when we send it out at least 1 week ahead of the meetings. Sometimes that's not possible. And I as much as we can, give as much notice to your committee and to the public so that they can review these items, feel prepared as they're coming into the meetings, and we can have the most productive meetings possible. Also, let's see, sorry, I can't see my little button here. Here it is. Okay. So Khalid sends me the meeting templates reflecting the agendas ahead of time, which is really helpful. And I think something that we should all be in the process of, in the, mindset of getting that into our inbox and ready to go for the meeting. I personally take meeting minutes live during the meeting so that at the end of the meeting, I can review and send out immediately to get it off my plate. So using this, minutes template, all I have to do is say, under the city agencies, DSNY came to, reported that blah, blah, blah. And, and then Parks reported blah, blah, blah. And then as someone asks a question, Debbie Quinones asked blah, blah, blah. And then the response was blah, blah, blah. So, it's like something that's, you can just do live during the meeting so that it's not something that, you have to think about and worry about for the days and weeks to come. Ideally, I only do this because I know that it's the way I know it's going to get done quickly. So if you can find someone on your committee, whether it's your vice chair or someone else, you can obviously delegate this task to someone else. But just as chairs, I think we should all be prepared to pull the weight in case it doesn't get done. And that, at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible to make sure these meeting minutes get done for our committees and as is required for the board. As Xavier mentioned, we think we should adjust the process moving forward so that every committee is listening to something that requires an action item 1 month and then voting on at the next month's meeting. This provides us with the opportunity to inform ourselves of anything that, avoid any negative consequences of our decision making and to do the legwork behind whatever it is that we're voting on or taking a position on, whether that's collecting data or information from different parties in the month between the meetings, or going on a site visit to, the park or the restaurant or whatever it is as necessary. We think we should make this a standard practice for all the committees so that everyone expects this from us. So that when, Parks comes to me, I am continually telling them, this is our process. It's going to take us 2 months to get this letter to you. So that way that they're thinking about that ahead of time. And now they know to come to us, 2 months in advance to get something approved. And I think there are some things that happen to come through that can't always fit this, perfect strategy. So, in our opinion, and, Xavier can jump in at any time, but if there's a legitimate reason that it might need to be fast tracked, like for example, this month at Parks, we had 3 already action items that we had prepared. And then Parks, sends a note asking to be on the agenda and they need a letter of support by a specific deadline. And, in this case, it was an item that we had put on the statement of district needs and budget, and it, needed to be approved so that they could get the pilot running. So, we went ahead and fast tracked that ahead of, this standard procedure. So I think, vast majority, if not everything, should follow this process. And if there's a question about, whether something can or should be fast tracked, I think, definitely bring it to Xavier's attention. And I think, we can discuss that and see what's reasonable. All right. And then executive meetings, do you want me to talk about this, Xavier?
Can I ask a question before you move on?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
With regards to that specifically, I know you just said that there are some things that don't fall under that. Do people need to wait a whole month or an extra month to get a letter of acknowledgement saying that they came before us?
No. Yeah, I think letters of acknowledgement where we're not taking a position. I think
So hold on, Jessica. So I just want to opine.
Yeah.
So in the past, and the answer to that is yes and no. It depends on what the situation is. If it is something that is just to verify, or if it is something that we have a standing position on that may be contrary to, or contraindicated to, then yes, they should. So we can assess and do our due diligence. So in the past, when we have taken positions, previous chairs have pumped the brakes. Elsa, Diane, Matthew, even Robert would pump the brakes and say, we need to investigate this, even if it's something that they just needed that validation letter. So, I've spoken actually literally to recently Robert and Matthew about that and that protocol, and Nilsson and I as well have spoken on that times when there's been a pump the brake moment and we come back just to give us that pause. So it's a yes and no, and it depends on what the situation is. So
Okay, can I pose a actual situation so I can get more clarity? So if, for an example, what we just had at our last committee where Odyssey is they were informed by go to your brother. They were informed by the state that they needed to inform us, come before us and inform us of their expansion of services. They did that. Do they still need an additional month to wait to get the letter of acknowledgement? And if so, for what reason?
So two reasons. They are just checking a box in this case. However, we have a standing moratorium that says no new or additional services. This is an additional service. And having listened to the meeting, they injected additional information, which they did not disclose fully. So it's incumbent upon us not to abdicate that responsibility, investigate it. And then again, they're checking a box to say, yes, we're adding, but we had a standing position saying, we don't want any more. We're trying to investigate. So again, it's not that whether or not we'd be opposed, they're trying to solve the problem by helping encapsulate their patients and treat them internally. So that is why those combined two would be responding that way versus requesting support or position. I hope that clarifies.
A little bit. So with respects to, because the first thing you said as the reason was the standing moratorium, I wanted to ask you, I want to just make sure I'm clear on this, because this was something I was talking to Marlene about the other day. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we all voted on this moratorium. It was a request we made to the state. The state didn't actually grant us a moratorium. Am I correct? So, because when you say we have a standing moratorium, are you saying it like you know what I mean? Because we passed that because we wanted that to happen, but we didn't receive any response from the state that they were actually respecting that. So that's what I'm just trying to get clear, so you know what I mean. So I can, like Jessica said, I can let people know ahead of time when they reach out what they can expect. And
So we had an existing resolution calling for a moratorium of no new or additional services. That was how we do everything by calling through resolution form, where we call for action in our model per the city charter. That's what was called for. Whether or not the agency OASIS or DOH-MH or elected members respected it informs where they stand on a issue. But we as a board had asked for a moratorium and said, this is our line in the sand. We need to assess no new or additional. And so that is, again, that is the model we've been granted by the city charter, and whether they want to listen to us or not, the fact is that we had a partner and other partners who've come and said, like, we are listening, we want to be good partners. So I think that's the empowerment there, and the more that we get those people to come to the table, the better we are. So again, so that's where it is. So it's saying that, you know, every resolution we pass, and then I think it'd be good to go to Nilsa, who's had her hand patiently, and she could probably opine a little bit as a former chair and been in this process a long time. Even the resolutions we pass at the full board, the item, the State Liquor Authority, Michael Smith wrote back today and said, yes, we would, if they were out of line with the conditions, we would investigate. And if it was found they're out of line, then we'll call for a penalty. But it's, again, our conditions are a recommendation. It's through resolution form, and it depends on the enforcement mechanism by the agency involved. So hope Nilsa, I hope that answers. Maybe she could add some color to the situation and flavor.
Hi, Isaac. So what I wanted to add was that this is not the first time in my recollection that Odyssey House expands within this district. And the reason why we sometimes do not immediately grant a letter, if even a letter, depending on how it's phrased, a letter of acknowledgement that they've come in front of the board, is because other agencies have misrepresented their visit, almost as if they have fully informed the board and used that to supplement their applications for expansion. Now, we've had issues in the Human Services Committee before your tenure, where it's actually gotten very heated, where the community has come in when they found that there's been an expansion of services and don't feel that they have enough time to opine in one meeting. And so when it goes from, let's say, 1 month to a next, it allows the community to get involved so that there's 2 chances, so that usually the public may come for the first meeting and give their opinion, and then they'll come in for the second meeting as a follow-up where the Human Services Committee votes and takes a position. And so in terms of the moratorium was something that had been in play for a long time for CB11 and hadn't been voted on and enacted many years ago, at least a decade ago. And then finally, the board took a stand and voted it. While Oasis and the state may not respect our moratorium because they feel that they have this ability to just cite different programs in a community, it is still incumbent about the community board to ensure that we represent what the community feels, especially with the oversaturation that we have here. So while it may not be, it's not up to Oasis to tell us what we should or should not do, or that they're respecting it. It is up to us to make sure that they understand that we've discussed it and this is how we feel at this point in time. Oasis is notorious for citing programs, for expanding programs with no community involvement, or for just saying you must just go to the community board. And that's just another box they check. So it's incumbent upon us to really make sure that we understand everything that's going on, because ultimately we're the ones that are going to be, we're the face of the community. And so when the community sees an expansion without understanding what's gone into it, it just looks like the community board is not doing all it should do and its due diligence. And that was all I wanted to say on that.
Thank you, Nilsa. Isaac, was that helpful? And
Yes, thank you, Nilsa.
Welcome,
Thank-
Isaac.
Thank you, Nilsa, and I value your continued partnership and leaning in. And
Absolutely.
So, Jessica, you want to carry on?
Yeah, just really quickly, apologies for that. I'm thinking in environment, open space and parks land. And, we have a tendency, or have had in the past, either like Central Park Conservancy or parks coming to us with a quick deadline. And usually if I will ask, do you need a letter of support, or do you need a letter of, that you presented to the committee? Because for some cases, like something in Central Park that's, on the opposite end of our neighborhood, we can more easily, submit something within a month in a case like that. But just wanted to clarify on that. For executive meetings, I think Xavier and I have been talking, and wanted to give a shout out to Nilsa because we were talking about the way you used to run the executive meetings and how we used to sort of report back from what happened at the different committee meetings, and used it as an opportunity to make sure that we were all aware of the action items coming before full board, that we have, a full understanding as the leadership of the community board, what those items entail, and, do as much as we can to reduce confusion at full board, and to, enhance the alignment that we have together ahead of time at executive, and that be, a standard process moving forward. And it doesn't have to be like, your full board report, but, going through your action items and anything that the full leadership of the community board should be aware of will be really helpful. Did you have something to say, Nelsa?
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, I'm just looking around the table and knowing everything that you've added to these processes over the year, and Xavier has been a real champion about change and keeping what works and what doesn't work. And I too would use the agenda and flip it around to the minutes because it was already there and you can populate. One question that I had, right? Because I'm the vice chair of land use, but I'm the chair of office oversight. So we had an instance at land use, as you know, where about a month ago, 2 months ago, for one of the meetings, the minutes were not complete, and they actually was what was posted by the office to make sure that we're in compliance, right? And so once that was brought to our attention, we didn't vote on it. And I did, since I chaired that meeting, I did the minutes for the subsequent meeting. And I've been meaning to go back and do those minutes, right? The ones that were in question. Have we decided as a board chair and vice chair, have you decided in your deliberations who best in the committees should take minutes? Or is it, as you mentioned, Jessica, that it could be appointed by the chair? And the reason I say that is because we have minutes due for this month, right? And I got on a little late because I was having technical difficulties, and then I had a Zoom meeting for work. And so by a certain time, I had to get off. And so I didn't see the whole meeting, and I see the draft minutes. But I don't know if this is, again, another instance where the draft minutes have just been posted, because it doesn't seem like it has a lot of meat. So I'm wondering if there should be consideration. I know that the vice chairs already do district needs and budget, but I'm wondering if there should be another consideration where it's clearly stated who is expected to do the minutes, right? So if the vice chair should be doing the minutes, then I know I have to calculate my time so that I know during that meeting I can do what you do, Jessica, try to do them live, or create a niche of time always so that I can go back and listen to the recording and fill them in. Because I just was wondering if you could give me guidance, either one of you, if you've talked about that, because I think that it can be very haphazard monthly. Some committees are really good about getting their minutes in and taking the responsibility. And then there are other committees that may fall through the cracks through no fault of anybody's. So I just want to be sure that if this is something that I should tackle, I don't have a problem tackling it, right? I just wanted to get a sense. And maybe you have no thoughts on it, right? And you may not weigh in on it. In that case, I'll talk to my chair and find out, if it's a good practice where he and I can alternate, or if I should do it myself. Because I don't want our committee is very important, right? Like, because of the action items for land use, just like parks, right? Parks is land use items, parks, environment, and open space. So those minutes, everything is important, public safety and everything. I don't want it for us to fall behind because we're not giving enough meat in our minutes.
So Jess, I can have you opine on your process.
Yeah.
I know when I was, I'll just share from my experiences. When I was vice chair of housing, because Brody Enoch had a visual disability, I wound up doing all the minutes. But then when I was
Right.
chair, I did the minutes. The buck always kind of stopped with the chair kind of
Right.
attitude in doing the minutes.
Yeah.
So I think, and we've allowed, even during our tenure together, Nilsa, and I think even now with Jess and I, is like a certain degree of independence for the chairs to delegate, but ultimately the deliverables come from the chair of that committee.
Yes.
But go ahead, Jess, in your process.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I've seen, and we've tried different things in our committee. Whether it's the chair appointing the vice chair or anyone else, or to take the minutes, or, it's just sort of a round robin of people. And, in the beginning of the meeting, one of the script responses is the minutes of tonight's meeting are being taken by blank. So then, probably before your meeting starts, you should have already spoken to the person as the chair, who that person is, and they should know that, be aware of it, and be responsible for that. But I think the danger is that sometimes when, this is delegated, it sometimes doesn't get done, right? So in the end, I think the chairs have to be the ones, responsible for the completion, whether it's following up with the person that they had assigned to do the minutes or had volunteered to do the minutes that month. And if the minutes don't get done, then the chair needs to do the minutes and get them submitted, within the time required.
Yeah, because I think Jason is awesome. He conducts the meeting, and I know that the minutes have been done, but I do know that there's been an instance or so where the minutes may not have as much information. And so, I was at the point where I'm like, okay, I'll just take my own minutes and maybe fill them in when the template is sent by Angel. And then, Jason can finish and add in, because, especially with the land use items and ULURPs and all that coming up, we don't want to just say, that minutes aren't posted completely, or that they're informational purposes only, because honestly, when our minutes are for informational purposes only, but I believe that as chairs and vice chairs, and that we have a responsibility to inform at the full board, exactly like as Xavier says, those 3 bullet points that we may discuss at executive, because honestly, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a cop-out to our community when we just say for informational purposes only, and we just say the easiest thing, but we don't go into more depth of what the meeting covers. And then we can say, for further information, please look at the minutes. So that's why I want to make sure that I'm working as well as I should be, so that everybody is informed, because the expectation can't just be on Jason, and I know that Jason does a lot, and he does the minutes, and so I just want to make sure that I'm doing my part. So I didn't know if there had been a discussion where the vice chairs would be doing the minutes that I may have missed. So I just wanted to bring myself up to speed. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nelsa. Yeah, and I think all those are great points. And I think, like, at the end of the day, the chairs should be responsible for their baseline requirements, and minutes are one of those baseline requirements. And if they delegate that to someone else, or there's other processes that are determined, the carrying through of that process is still the onus of the chair, right? And chairs should obviously be in attendance at their own meetings, and in the events that they can't be, they should be giving their vice chairs adequate notice and the support and information that they need to run the meetings. And I think that in turn should, and Xavier can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we go to full board, for me, it doesn't really make sense that a chair presents the items moving forward if they weren't at the meeting, right? But that they should be prepared with all of the information at hand to answer any questions and prevent confusion for the full board meeting. So, and I think just in general, chairs are like our first line of defense when it comes to a successful board. So, things like attendance, like doing your minutes, and all of these are sort of the baseline requirements. So, if you're a chair, you should be doing those things. And, if you want to delegate them to other people, that's fine, but you still need to ensure that they're getting done. And, our leadership for the full board is really coming from this group of people. So how do we set the example for everyone else? Turning on our cameras, being on time to meetings, having our things in order, and all, everything ready to communicate effectively. That's all I have, Xavier.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Jessica. I want to
that-
thank, I want to thank you both because, Xavier has mentioned about the cameras being off during full board. And and as a former chair, that happened quite a bit, even though we would ask our members to put the cameras on. And you have a lot of pushback from the community. I've heard it because I work in the community. I run, two major pieces of buildings in Manhattan and in the Bronx. And one of the things they say is, why aren't you on camera? Why can't we see who's effectively supposedly representing us? And I will tell you that in the last full board meeting, cameras were off close to 90% of the time during that meeting. And if you go back and you review, you will see how much the board was off camera instead of on. And that was kind of surprising to me because I know that you and Xavier and others have made it a point to speak on the importance of being as face-to-face as we can. And I think we need to, I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's something that we have to be mindful of. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, because I want to move this along. I just want to conclude. Thank you, Jessica, for commenting on that and showing your process and the spreadsheet of chairs. If you like that, I'm very confident that Khalid and Jess will share it all with you so you can mirror that. And it's a good way to track. And also too, so that way, when you distribute it to when it comes time, it can be distributed to all of us here if you wanted to share it and say, hey, these are the things we discussed. But again, it's another tool, just like our GChat and how, not GChat, but the Google Drive and our Sandbox, where we can put documents in, we can work on them, we can go back and forth in the digital space amongst our crazy days while we serve the community. As to the practice, in our best practices, I of the opinion that following and setting that trend to where we give that 1 month pause, then we issue the letter of support or take a position unless there's a timeline, such as the 30-day notification limit with SLA, or you have a congressperson who's tardy to the party and says, hey, I've got money, please apply. We need a letter of support from the CB. And if it's something that we have set precedents with an instance like that, which is going to have a positive impact to our community, that's something where we can pivot. That's an exception to the rule, if you will. But I think it also is important that when we do take that pause in between monthly meetings, we do our due diligence. And it's easier to really take a bite of the apple with parks and land use, because you can go walk to the lot. You can walk on the Esplanade. It's visual. You can see it. DSNY. You can go over there and take a tour eventually of the new sanitation garage. These are palpable things, but when it comes to other committees' work, when you have to deal with data and technical data, and you're being held up because an agency won't give it to you, an organization, that's where the challenges come in. But that's where the Manhattan Borough's President's Office is here to help. Just like Tommy Vest, our new Chief Legal Counsel there, she can help us write FOILs. George James is another resource because he's able to look up additional information that may or may not affect your committee's work. So these are opportunities for us to engage in. I'm going to move the meeting along. Jessica, did you have a quick question? Morris?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment that the bylaws are actually super clear in that it states that the committee chair, one of the committee chair's responsibilities is to ensure that meeting minutes are kept. It does not prohibit the committee chair from delegating that responsibility, nor does it explicitly assign it to the vice chair, Nilsa. So I think it's something to take up with the committee chair if it's too much to juggle, and it seems like a lot to sort of put on you. But it came up last year and the year before that when there was some missing minutes on public safety and transportation, whose responsibility not to do them, but to call for volunteers or delegate that responsibility so that we're in compliance. The bylaws are super clear. I'm glad you all are discussing. Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, it's in much of our things, from public membership to our process is laid out in the bylaws. And that last group that did that revision, I remember being in those spaces, in those rooms. They put a lot of effort into that. So thank you. And like I said, the buck stops with the chair of the committee. And that's the way we deal with it. And Nelson, one last comment, because then I want to move on to, I'm
No,
going to go
yeah.
out of order.
Yeah, I
Or-
just
go
wanted,
ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the question was there an expressed assignment, like decided through executive? Because I am relatively new as the vice chair to land use. And so I wanted to find out to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. It has nothing to do about capability. It has to do with me scheduling it within my calendar so that I can do it. So I just want to be super clear that it's the question that I was getting at was there a decision by the leadership now that vice chairs should do the minutes based on the fact that vice chairs are doing the district needs assignment automatically as part of their duties? Was that something that was done so that I could be sure I wasn't missing doing the minutes? So yeah, I understand about the bylaws. I remember doing bylaws revisions and stuff like that, but I wanted to make sure that something else hadn't been discussed here that I may have missed as not being part of executive for a bit. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Nelson. The short answer is no final decision had been made at executive. It still stood. And so, yeah. So with that, I'm going to move us along because we have a presenter with the Independent Redistricting Commission, Miranda Goodwin-Rabb. I'm just going to move us out of order because she has a little bit of a time crunch. She's going to present and on this, what the commission's work has accomplished. So Khalid, if you wouldn't mind sharing screen, you're allowing her to share her screen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making the time for me for tonight. As Xavier said, I'm Miranda Goodwin-Rabb. I'm here from the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. I'll give you a quick presentation kind of where the redistricting process is, because it's been a thing that we've all heard a lot about the past couple of years, and I'm sure we all have a little fatigue. So I'll do some quick updates and answer any questions you might have. Let's see if I can, sorry, there we go. All right. Sorry. 1 second. Okay, how do my apologies. I don't know if I can view the whole thing. So you guys can see my screen, right? So
Yeah, I think
okay.
if you do slideshow, view show.
Oh, duh, thank you. Sorry. All right, here we go. So a little bit about redistricting. I'm sure a lot of you know, the census happens every 10 years and then it triggers redistricting. The state and federal redistricting, there was a kind of first round of this from 2001 through 2022. The city council redistricting also wrapped up for the elections happening this fall. Yeah, so where we're at right now is there was a court ordered redo of the assembly lines. Basically, there was one lawsuit that challenged the congressional and state Senate lines, and another lawsuit that challenged the assembly lines that were drawn by the legislature. That lawsuit has kicked the authority to draw the assembly lines back to the state independent redistricting commission. So I'm sure a lot of you remember because we're all civically engaged on this call, but in 2014, there was a ballot proposition that, that passed creating this independent redistricting commission. It's a 10-member body. So the majority and minority leaders of both houses get to appoint 4 people total. So majority minority leader of each house gets to pick 2. So there's 4 appointed by the majority, 4 appointed by the minority, excuse me. And then each of groups of those 4 get to pick an independent to sort of caucus with them. So it's a 10-member body in total. This is a snapshot of them. I can't tell you all about their extensive accomplishments because I would be here until next week. But take a look at our website, read about them. These are the people, making the decisions. A little bit of timeline. So as I mentioned, November 2014 is when this ballot proposition passed. There was 10 members appointed and we finally had funding and there was a lot of obstacles, but by spring 2021, the commission was up and running. We didn't receive the data until pretty late given COVID. So we didn't receive census data is typically received by April. We didn't get it until the middle of August. So that definitely threw a wrench in some of the timelines that were written into the constitutional amendment that created the commission. That fall, the commission produced 2 sets of maps on partisan lines. We had hearings throughout the state, and then we again voted on partisan lines. There was 2 sets of maps that were sent to the legislature. The legislature voted down all of those maps and then drew essentially their own maps. As I mentioned, there was 1 lawsuit for the congressional and state senate. And then, of course, as we all remember, there was a court-appointed special master. This separate lawsuit that we're dealing with now has kicked that authority back to the State Independent Redistricting Commission. So where we were at now is that in December, the commission voted unanimously on a single map. So pretty revolutionary given our small history, but 1 map was voted for review and comment by the public. And where we're at now is we're in the midst of a public comment phase. So since January, we've been throughout the state. We've had 10 public hearings ranging from Buffalo. Our last one was in Queens, and we have 2 more. And just for clarity, these 12 counties that the hearings must be held in are actually written in the state constitution. So we didn't pick them. And the good thing is, even though they're in different locations throughout the state, all of them have a virtual component. So we're accepting testimony about any corner of the state at any of these hearings. If anyone on this call wants to call in and talk about Manhattan, there's 2 more chances to do that, as well as submitting written testimony. And in terms of timeline, these maps, the judge ordered that the maps be sent to the legislature by the end of April. So just a little bit, overall, what's interesting, I think, especially for Northern Manhattan, is that the population, while it's growing, we're losing population upstate, we're growing population downstate, which is, when redistricting gets very interesting, especially Northern Manhattan, the Bronx, right? Especially for congressional, if you think about it, because when the population shifts, then everything has to change. It's a fun mix between population and geography, right? So fun fact, Brooklyn grew a lot. Biggest out of any county, and it was already the biggest county, so it's close to 3 million people now. Just more data. And yeah, so as I mentioned, right now this process that we're going through is court ordered. So, a lot of people have been saying, why are you doing this? This was not our choice, and we're happy to do it, but it's not our choice. It was, this is the outcome as so dictated by a judge. So a little bit about community of interest. It's a term that gets thrown a lot around with redistricting, and it's really kind of the linchpin of what makes testimony useful. With redistricting, you're kind of triangulating between 3 things. You have the census data, you have any kind of relevant laws, so the Voting Rights Act, even just the numerical requirements of each district, right? They have to be within 5, it's a 10% deviation rule, so 5% above or 5% below the average ideal district size, which is 134,000 and change for an assembly district, and community testimony, right? Because that's sort of helps us connect the dots. We always say that our commissioners are very, very intelligent and very knowledgeable, but anyone on this call is really the expert in their community. And so what we need is public input to help us kind of connect the dots and really make sure that these maps are representative of the communities that New Yorkers are living in. So community of interest, it's a pretty broad amorphous term. It gets thrown around a lot. So some really good examples are language needs, right? Religion, as well as a common use of a shared infrastructure, whether that's a subway, a bus line, a bus stop, a community center, even a supermarket, a school, right? Because sometimes these maps are not obvious. So you might see a park and you say, okay, everyone on the west side of this park doesn't use the park and everyone on the east side does, right? But in reality, everyone, a mile to the west uses it, and people on the east, they have another park right next to them that they use more, right? So helping us kind of color in things that might seem obvious. A lot of boundaries get decided as obvious boundaries, and just because it looks like it on a map, it might not be an obvious boundary. So these are the kinds of things that we really need public testimony to kind of help fill in the gaps. So like I said, we're really hoping people will come to our last 2 hearings. You can call in virtually. It's really not an issue. We don't want anyone to be scared saying, oh, it's the Nassau hearing. Doesn't matter. We're here to hear. We are here to hear any input from anyone in the state. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If there's questions, there might be questions. And if there's no questions, you can go on your way. We're also accepting written testimony. Something that a lot of groups are doing is a petition, and different copies of it. So we know that 100 people are saying the same message. I will say that there's power in numbers, right? So if we know that 200 people all want the same thing, that gets elevated and considered, right? The squeaky wheel gets greased. And so the more we hear a certain idea, the more attention it gets. So as I mentioned, these last two hearings are next week. So it's Tuesday and Wednesday. The virtual component will probably start between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. And we're looking forward to hearing from anyone. So I'll take any questions, and sorry if I talk fast, that's a flaw of mine. But.
That's quite all right. Good company. And thank you again. It was a pleasure meeting at Borough Board last week. I'm sorry we couldn't get you to before the full body. Do any of our board members have questions? Please raise your hands. I'm not seeing any. If you would put the website in the chat so people can just click the hyperlink and look, and then you can zoom in and see. If you go to the website, you can see what the old lines and new lines were and see the overlap.
Yeah, take a look on our website at the draft assembly plan tab. It's an interactive map. You can have the current lines, you can have the draft proposal lines. And those are a helpful binary to start with. Say, I hate your new map, or I hated the old map. But you can also get creative and, just tell us certain things, certain communities that you think need to be kept together. I mean, we all know this, but a lot of redistricting, it's really about who am I voting with to elect a representative that will best represent us at the state level, right? So you can get creative. You can also just say, I like your district, but you're missing these 3 blocks. It doesn't have to be fancy. Really, I think natural boundaries are also what we're always looking for, because again, sometimes it looks obvious if you don't know the neighborhood, and then it turns out that really wasn't obvious at all. So.
Yep. And it's very true. And I mean, just looking at the 68th, which covers us, and something we commented on last year was the senatorial map and congressional maps, which were we had Gianaris take Yorkville and El Barrio, just like a sliver right through from Queens, and didn't make sense. And so here we are. So Nilsa,
I will say, just assembly again, it's 134,000. It's smaller than a council district, which is it's the most kind of granular representation that we have in the city. If you live in like parts of Long Island, upstate, you have a town board, or you have, town council, but our city council is bigger than the assembly, right? So it can be a little tricky, and it really makes you think about who needs to be kept together. I see one hand raised.
Yep, I was going to go to our Nilsa Rama. Nilsa.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you, Xavier, for giving that example, because I was racking my brains trying to come up with an example, because sometimes these maps are drawn in such it seems like an arbitrary way where you have these connections of district representation that doesn't seem to fit. So I'm going to go back into the website and double check a lot of stuff, but I'm wondering, is this presentation available to the board because you went through it rather quickly, or is this something you sent to the board?
So I can try to make the next full board. I wasn't able to make this week's. We have a really small staff, so I tried to get someone and we weren't able to, and I'm sorry about that. But I also put my email in the chat, so if people have questions, I'm quick to respond. So yeah.
Right. No, but I'm just wondering, the presentation you just showed us tonight, is that available? The slides, is that available for us to read? Because we went through things rather quickly.
I'm going to double check with my team and make sure that we're sending it out, but I don't know why not. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question, Elsa. Don't see any other hands raised. So Miranda, thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much. And I'm sorry.
Go to cb11m.org/calendar. You can see when our next full board is. And I would recommend popping by.
Yeah, we'll definitely try. It's a big city and in a bigger state. So when we're a tiny team, I'm trying to fling myself from Buffalo to Suffolk. But please do share my email on the website and any questions anyone has. And we'll talk about the good thing is we have really the month of March is a good time to get input in, even if you can't come to a hearing. Obviously, written stuff is really important as well. Super easy to upload stuff on our website and other people can see it. So any questions, please reach out to me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a nice evening.
You too. Bye-bye. Hey, Khalid, if you could pop back up our agenda, we're going to move in to the next item, which is the coordinating review of proposed 5G link NYC kiosks at 401 East 101st Street, 420 East 111th Street, and 3 Mount Morris Park West, 18 Mount Morris Park West. So Khalid, do you want to kick us off on this, or because
Well, I did share the email thread with yourself and Jessica. I already had discussions with Stacy Gardner, our representative with OTI, and they have scheduled to meet with us on the Public Safety and Transportation Committee meeting for March 9th. So that's the Thursday after Environment, Open Space and Parks. So essentially, the team will come by to present on the nature of the kiosk installment and field any questions that the committee members and any participants might have.
okay. Now it says in the letter that you sent, well, that Angel sent to all of us, that they needed feedback within 60 days.
Yes.
Have they extended that timeline?
So yeah, in terms of conversations that I had with Stacy Gardner, they would be willing to receive input from the community board post their visit with us. But we did receive that letter, I believe, back in November, and it was difficult coordinating with OTI post that, and our Public Safety Transportation Committee did not meet in January due to a quorum issue, and it was just a difficulty in scheduling with them, and we're lucky that they're able to come in for March and discuss these matters, because as those constituents had reached out to us via the public comment period during our full board meeting, they've actually been calling into the office, and they've already submitted correspondence to us prior, and we've already confirmed receipt. For the record, I shared it with Jose so that he's aware, and that Angel is also aware. So I'm also keeping Jill McManus, and I believe the other Ms. Scarrato. I'll be keeping them informed that we'll be discussing it for the forthcoming meeting.
Our larger concern, I would say, and I'm open to our committee's thoughts, but I think with a lot of OTI and other agencies is that they send out a comment period, but then failure to show up to our committee so we can actually have a thorough understanding. But they have said they're willing to extend the period for our comment prior to engaging with the build out, right?
Yes, but I will say that was a verbal phone conversation. I don't have that in writing, so I will confirm with Stacy Gardner to make sure that is still the case in writing. Okay.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to hear from our committee on what we heard during full board, members of the public who really vehemently opposed, I would say, is what the takeaway was. But I'd like to hear from everyone here what their thoughts were. So Jess, you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Chair. So back in, I think, 2019, we had Environment, Open Space and Parks, a few groups come to present about these things. And I remember it was kind of a challenging experience because there wasn't at that time really any information, and it wasn't clear whether, the advocacy groups were bringing forth like truthful information, or if, we could trust the information that was coming from OTI or, these sort of providers of these elements. But, I know these are more about the kiosks, but I do think it's a concern that, they do put these, on top of buildings. And I've heard that they make, they make agreements with buildings to put in one service, and then that one service will, sell it to every other service. So instead of one element on your roof, you now have, 15, and it gets to be an eyesore. But I think I've reached out to people in my networks on health, and I haven't been able to, verify or, I guess confirm any of the sort of information on, from these studies and that people are concerned about. But I do think, there are a ton of these. They are, pretty ugly most of the time. And, if there are real health risks that we need to be paying attention to, I think we should definitely do that. And I don't think that we did that enough in in the past. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Jess. I'm going to go to our other committee member, and then I'll come to you, Jessica. Nilsa.
I agree with Jessica. The health risks are unknown. I think that we as a committee, we as a board, we sometimes focus so much on the obvious health issues, like diabetes and heart disease and obesity, but we don't realize the quality of life that can be impacted by these towers and any EMF radiation, give offs and stuff like that. So, I would be interested even before they come to do as much research as we could, so that we can read and be prepared, so that we actually have cogent questions when they come. Lots of times we are just responding to what's presented. And then if someone else brings it up that may have an adversarial stance, then it just seems like we may be repeating what this other group, this anti-group, is saying, as opposed to coming up with our own questions. So, I definitely want to read everything I can in terms of this project prior, so that we can ourselves inform the questions, as opposed to just asking questions based on the information they give us, because this is a real health concern. I live on the 28th floor. I know someone else who lives on the 30th floor. The apartments, sometimes, you get these readings off of these like EMF readers that are coming off of the cable, the cell phones, and this and that. And you have to wonder if they're impacting health, and if they are, long term, what does that mean by putting 3 more towers within our community, and how that can impact the immediate area, if there is an impact, right? So those are things that I think that we need to better inform ourselves on. That was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Jessica Morris.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this discussion, recognizing that I am not a member of the executive committee. So thank you for giving me the floor. I just a point of clarification and a point of concern, not a technical category. Point of concern is procedural, that this came through, and these are things that don't have a neat and tidy classification. And so if one committee did not meet, that the board didn't necessarily see it or hear about it in a timely manner is concerning. Issue aside, which I think was well described in our meeting on Tuesday, balancing the health impacts with the incredible need and multi-dimensional benefit of connectivity in our community. So I think that's, we don't want to compromise one for the other, but we do recognize both of them. So it's something that doesn't happen very often, but to encourage when, and I don't know what the process is for having information shared, information that may seem inconsequential, but that, is being put forward to the board office, but for whatever reason, maybe not making it to committee, or it doesn't go to one committee, maybe it also needs to kind of be tried at another committee. I know that's tough to balance when things are happening in real time. So point of concern and point of clarification. Thank you.
Yep. So thank you. There is usually a lead time from when a letter is sent, and sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's not. Case in point, we've even found with our electeds, when our own letters are sent, that it doesn't actually land in the electeds on the electeds desk. Case in point, letters that were sent to Senator Serrano, he didn't even know. I had to physically send a text with a PDF attached and say, this is what your staff didn't put in your lap. And likewise, when we're coordinating, because we don't meet on and this has been a challenge in perpetuity, like since community boards have existed and the digital age. So we're always looking to improve the process. So again, with this, I think, thank you for the comment. I think it's something we're here to discuss in this point of concern with this new technology as well. And I'm always open to feedback and improving processes. And again, so.
Sorry, another point of clarification that I think has value to the overall operational discussion you were having with regard to minutes previously is this was discussed at length, whether it was an EOSP meeting or and a public safety meeting. And I think there may have been 2 points at some, in our recent history that this was discussed. If those concerns are accurately documented in our minutes, we should have them at our fingertips right now and understand historically where our committees stood after those lengthy discussions to be able to then continue to opine and invite then the full board to sort of understand the work that's been done, because it's not a blank slate. Sorry,
so yeah, real quick, I'm going to go to Nilsa. Is that prior to the pandemic, God, I can't believe it's been 3 years. But we were actually in the process of trying to online, not just our meetings, so that when we're sitting in the room in the office space and trying to arrange, we invested in the camera system and all of that. We also were in the process of putting all of our documents in a searchable format online, so to make it accessible for the members to go back. And now we have Airtable. This is something that and Nilsa could tell you and others that being a former computer science programmer, like I love accessibility, I love usability, and we do get a lot of compliments on our website. So, but what happened was with that, just historical, is that they were in the process of onlining everything, and then the pandemic hit, and no one was in the office, so that all of that paperwork processing and digitizing, it all stopped, and so they picked back up, and they're doing it bit by bit, and we now have almost a completely full staff, and other than the part-time position, and we'll just see with that. But again, to your point, accessibility, access, immediate, boom, at the fingertips. We all agree on that. So I think it's about us putting in place that model. So I'm going to go to Nilsa and then Jessica, and then I'd like to hear a little bit more just about this, since it's going to go to public safety and transportation. Go ahead, Nilsa.
Just if you could just refresh my memory, when someone puts in for a presentation, they usually check the committee that it's going to that they're interested in presenting, but do they ever choose more than 1 or 2? And should we consider as a board, I think Jessica made very good points, and so when a committee does not have quorum and they should have presented, whatever is scheduled for that meeting, should that then come automatically to executive? Or so for instance, these kiosks, right? Obviously they're going on a building or on land or on a corner or however there's designating. So if they couldn't come to public safety, maybe they could have gone, I'm pulling this very loosely, to land use, or maybe they could have gone, come to executive to do a presentation. And in that instance, or at least to the full board to be added, so at least the full board can hear the presentation, and then the committee could opine on it the following month. Because now these people are going to come in to public safety next month. I don't know if they're looking for comments from us or what the board wants to do in terms of opining on this. But right now, I don't really have too much information on this, and I would have rather tried to get on this sooner rather than later. So I'm just wondering if there should be a consideration when there is no quorum, that those presentations that are affected by that committee get automatically shifted in such a way to either a full board or to the executive committee, if there is no other committee that can accommodate because they've already met.
So thank you, Nelson. You know that in the past, that when there's been a timeline, a time crunch, we have shifted an action item that had a time period that was slowly expiring, or quickly expiring, And excuse the background noise, the family getting ready, time for bed, actually. They would shift it to executive. I think in this instance, if I understood what Khalid said, it's been hurting cats with getting them to show up to present on this particular installation. Am I correct in that, Khalid?
Correct. And I'll also just want to give you all some further clarity on, what's transpired with the information. The 5G link kiosk presentation, we've received that, I believe, a while ago, even prior to this notice, in terms of the locations within our district. All of that information is posted on our calendar, and I posted it in the January Public Safety and Transportation date, which I don't know, off of the top of my head right now, but it's definitely in there. If you click into it, you'll be able to see the 5G link kiosk presentation in PDF format, along with the same outreach notice notifying the board of the locations and the time frame for submitting comment. In terms of the committee, the decision for which committee it would go forward to, that was a decision that was made internally, and actually I'm the one that actually made the suggestion, because typically anything that is installed on public sidewalks is a DOT matter, and for transportation, that's why we figured for public safety and transportation, it would have been the more feasible committee. But then moving forward, the board members would decide, well, we think it's more pertinent on X committee or Y committee, mostly because we don't have an information technology committee. So that's why we were a little bit stuck in that decision. But of course, moving forward, you all can decide what you think would be more appropriate for OTI matters and link kiosk matters to go before. And in terms of, and I know Jessica had a question in terms of, do applicants submit submit a request to present before multiple committees? That is the case. Yes, we have one particular applicant right now who would like to present before the Public Safety and Transportation Committee and the Youth and Education Committee for the month of March.
Great, thank you for that clarification. And real quick, I just I'm of the position that when you lose quorum on an issue like this, just always feel free to reach out to say, hey, we didn't, this is important, and can we get this on executive? I'm pretty confident that most of us would say, yes, let's go ahead and go forward and discuss it. So I think that's the best practice. Yeah, and again, we're given the opportunity. You're going to confirm tomorrow whether or not that is a solid commitment. We'll get that, and then they'll come to public safety, and then we can even take it up at executive to from a position prior to full board. I have no problem with that. But Jess, your question, comment, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to own up because I think this is partially on me. I think I did not prioritize these emails because I knew that our position back in 2020 was not to take a position. So if it is of any fault of mine, I apologize. But I did want to know, I was looking through my records, and back when we heard about this 2019, 2020, I think we as a Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee reached out to Housing and Health and Human Services to weigh in as well, because they were talking about installations on apartment buildings and the health impacts, which obviously impact those committees. So obviously it touches public safety and transportation. So maybe it even touches land use. So maybe it would be best for this, in my opinion, to live in executive, as it touches so many things. But I think having it move forward in public safety, I will personally invite our committee to join that meeting as is possible to be able to help weigh in on this moving forward.
I think that's a good recommendation, because then the only quorum requirement is public safety, but then your committee could come in and Jose can entertain commentary. And I think even if Human Services wanted to take a stab at it, as it were, and say like, hey, this is our concerns from health, welcome to put it on their agenda as well, or show up to public safety and say, listen, Human Services per the calendar happens the following week. I'll leave it with you, Isaac, for you to either discuss it at committee or attend that and say, I can see our committee having these concerns. But at the end of the day, I think we should have this back on our agenda on the 16th of March, and we reaffirm a position so we can at least be ahead of the 8 ball, and then we just ratify it at full board. because until we move the calendar, full board is now on the 28th, and if we move EcoDev, it's the 21st, but I'd rather not leave you any chance for error, especially if they're giving us an opportunity to submit comment. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? I'll move the agenda along. Okay, thank you. I appreciate everyone's commentary. Thank you very much, everyone. 2, committee discussion of statement of mayor's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024. Now we get to have fun. So, Khalid, you want to toss things up on the screen? Just going to look on my big monitor. Oh, God. Okay.
You can, excuse me, you can all see this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay. I'll see if I can try to pull up the previous year's statement side by side so we can have a comparison, but it's going to be small. I'm on my personal laptop. I did my best.
Good effort.
I wish I knew how to do like a side panel there. And I'm trying to get rid of this panel with these extra pages or minimize that so I can get a larger. Goodness.
Usually if you drag in like either to top left or top right, it'll show like 2 windows. And you can drag one thing to the left and then it'll ask you what you want to put on the right.
Yeah, I think I saw that on like, but you know, when I'm sharing my screen, it messes me up. Yep. Great.
So while you're sorting that, Steph couldn't be with us tonight, nor full board. We did not get as much commentary as we did last year. And so that made it very difficult for us to, and in conjunction with working with the staff, to respond to the prelim budget. What Jess and I have discussed, and I spoke briefly with Khalid about it, is that some of these standing requests have existed for some time, and they've been either funded in part or they get pushed back, or they say they'll fund within existing resources. And we have the basic understanding that rather than not comment at all, to transfer last year's comments and just update them. So that way we're at least maintaining our position and holding true to our request, and for lack of a better phrase, doubling down on it. So again, in some of the requests didn't require comment because some were funded. That becomes very simple. It just doesn't need to be commented on because we got what we wanted. But again, that was the way, rather than not comment at all, would be to transfer some of those particular ones. So for those committees, for example, who didn't provide as robust of a commentary as we would have hoped for or expected. So, okay. Jessica, you had a question? Jessica Elliott, and then I'll go to Jessica.
I just had a quick question. Could we just highlight which ones we don't yet have a full response on?
So yeah, so Khalid, you want to run through that real quick? Agency specific, here we go.
Yes, so the ones that are highlighted in blue are the ones that we are can comment on. So Department of Aging, I know it's just one sentence. I don't think we're, or excuse me, 2 sentences. I don't think we're going to accept that. Department of Education, no comment as of yet. Department of Housing and Preservation and Housing Preservation and Development, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Department of Youth and Community Development, Health and Hospitals, Housing Authority, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and School Construction Authority.
Okay, Jason Villanueva, and then I'll go to Jessica Morris. Jason, you're muted.
Thank you, Chair. Is this not going back to the District Needs Committee?
We had a deadline that was due. We were given the deadline's technically passed.
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah.
We need for you to finalize and agree on the material tonight so that I can send it to the mayor's office and other stakeholders tomorrow, hopefully at least by the afternoon.
Okay. So that's why, Jason, is because technically the 30-day period was on Saturday, this Saturday past. And they gave us an extension, which was through yesterday, which would have coincided with the end of our full board, so the staff would have enough time to deliver it. Yeah, so that is why. And it got punted over here because the committees did not submit enough information for Statement of District Needs and Budget Committee to meet. Jessica Morris.
Thank you. So this is coming from the EcoDev perspective, but I think it might apply as a blanket consideration. I spoke with Giselle at length after EcoDev's meeting to confirm what our activity was at this very point, and what it was not. And I think Angel was a little bit frustrated that we didn't implicitly know what we were, supposed to be coming up with as far as a response. I did a little bit of analysis recognizing that the budget documents that we were essentially responding to were, 2,000 pages of material. But finding an anchor in the high level priorities of the 10-year capital plan and recognizing that those mayoral budget priorities align with generally, and again, as a blanket statement, align with the things that we're asking for. And so there's a lot of alignment between our asks and what is being prioritized, as opposed to when positions need to be taken because things are being cut, which is, I think, where we've been coming from in the past. So I know that doesn't get words on a page necessarily, but pointing to places of alignment to fill those gaps where there is support for what we've asked for in keeping agencies fully funded to try to deliver on those wiggly promises of we will try to accommodate this within the existing budget, which is often what we get back. I'm happy to pull that. I sent it to Giselle, but I'm happy to share it with anybody who wants, but it's a very helpful high level set of priorities that align with a lot of our asks. So pointing to where that makes sense for various agencies may be a good strategy to just get this where it needs to go and continue to align with what we've asked for in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, I see we have, well, and that's partly where I'm referring back to last year's response, but okay, let's go. We have the Department of Aging up. Do we have those requests side by side? Because there are a couple ways we can go about this. We can address each department independently. Jess, Elliot.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest maybe we just go ahead and copy over what was there from the previous year and as a starting point for each one, and then we can edit it from there.
Okay. Nelson, you had your hand raised?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to agree. I was going to suggest the same thing that Jessica did say about just copying last year's and then reviewing it. But I also concur with Jessica Morris in the fact of that if there's stuff that aligns, then we might be able to identify, and with her expertise and her commenting, where we're aligning so that we can just make sure whatever comments that should deviate, that we concentrate on those specifically, not so much where we align, because that's already, a fait accompli.
Yeah, looking at the deficit. For lack of a better word. Okay, all right. Elsa, we're getting a lot of feedback. Would you mind? Thank you. Okay. All right.
So I've copied over the previous year's statement regarding Department of Agent, and you let me know.
Okay. Jason, and then Jess.
Just clearing up process. All right. So we had a whole procedure protocol through SDN. I get it. We've done this a few times. That being said, the agencies have already been divvied up by the committees, right? Khalid, do you have that spreadsheet? It was created by me and Carly. I don't know if you have that with the workflow that breaks out the agencies based off community.
Are you talking about the work plan?
Yes.
Give me 1 second.
And the reason being is because then the agencies are broken out, right? And then at that point, the committee chairs, which I believe are all present. Forgive me, I'm on my phone, so I can't see the attendings. But the loud thought in my head is that, right, because we can't do a committee's work in 20 minutes, right? So the loud thought in my head is that you're going to present this, you're going to say whether or not the chair representing the committee is going to authorize the response, because this was a standing agenda item on every committee's, even land use went over it, and we didn't have any comments on the preservation aspect because the requests were fairly made from housing, right? And at least just off the top of my head, it sounds like housing, human services, and youth and education are who you're looking for responses from, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I would presume you'll present, and then those chairs will agree on behalf of their committees. And then what? Because this doesn't need to go through a formal voting process. This is a response on the committees to the administrative agencies in preparation for city council to vote, and then finally for us to discuss. And forgive my terms if I forgot the process, what it was called when we meet with the agencies over the summer.
District cabinet.
Yeah, well, not district cabinet, the district, I think it's called like district council.
Consultation.
Consultations, thank you. And this is why I'm saying all of that, because that covers a lot of the misconception about misinformation of whether or not a response is required. If the committee met about it, didn't determine a response is required, I'm just trying to figure out if it's an efficient time to try to do this live at this moment. That's it.
So Jason, just to clarify, yeah, the committees relay their information, statement of district needs and budget, assembles, reviews it. And then it goes to the full body, and then it passes even to executive to take a look-see. Then it goes to the full body because it's an official response from the board. So we were supposed to vote on this on Tuesday, but because we didn't have enough comments, and that's fine. I appreciate you being here to clarify the position of land use. So we don't have to comment on that. That's fine. So then the others, we would comment on. So you've clarified that there was no additional comment based on those requests. and the response from the prelim budget. So, but we do have to vote in this case, whatever we say, okay, we're fine with sending this letter and we vote on it, then this will go out, Khalid will clean it up, add whatever details needed, and then we have to ratify it in March. So that's the process, just to clarify. But you are correct in the other way the committee should be addressing it. It should be a standing item, and then, again, so thank you. All right, do we have, in that time, has everyone had a chance to review that? The Department of the Aging? Okay. Hold on, Jess?
I defer to the chair relating to this, but I say we just throw that first sentence at the very end and call this one good, because there's no specific information about specific requests that we need to update.
Yeah, we can do that. This is correct.
All right, that pleases you, Isaac?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right, let's move along.
Jessica, did you mean like its own separate or like,
No, you did it exactly how I would have done it.
Okay, cool.
All right, Department of Education. What was our response from last year? And David, you still on? You still with us?
So can I ask a question? Am I correct that you're gonna add what was there last year and add this at the end of it? What we have?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you everything that comment, it's just
Mhm.
basically giving a historical background for it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Before
Yes.
the ask.
Thank you.
David Giordano. David, are you there? David, can you see this?
David, you're unmuted and we could hear you, but you're not saying anything.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I?
Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
I'm trying to log onto a computer. I can't see it from the phone.
Okay.
Why don't we just go to the next one and come right back?
Okay, Khalid, let's just scroll down to the next. This was okay. Department of Housing Preservation Development. Let's see what we had. Okay. Yeah, look at it. John, are you there? Can you see that?
Yes, I can, sir.
Your thoughts? Because I know your committee didn't get to really hash this out.
Well, I endorse adding that on because affordable housing is still a priority with us, and as much funding as they can provide, we would be appreciated. It's sorely needed.
I'm just trying to pull up the register. Khalid, you don't happen to have the. Hold on.
What are you asking?
You don't happen to have the budget with the response, like our request.
The actual register? Give me 1 second.
But yeah, I mean, again, you can do this. We don't need to do it right now, but with anything related to HPD with our request as it relates to this commentary, just, I think if the committee is pleased with it, we just put what we're referencing, the tracking codes. If it pleases the committee, so that they have a reference point of what we're talking about. Does that make sense? I don't want to spin everyone's wheels any longer than what we're doing and try to edit this. And then Nilsa, your question?
It's not so much a question. I just wanted to bring to your attention that Jessica Morris put in a comment in the chat that it should be considered. And I also wanted, from general experience in talking with some developers, HPD is understaffed and overwhelmed, as my understanding. And so some projects that are ready to be put into the pipeline cannot be certified through ULER because they're just understaffed. So that doesn't have to be in the comment, but I'm just throwing that out there because you are commenting on the affordable housing timeline.
I think within the request, within our request, I know we've asked for additional inspections, and that would fall in as an expense item. So I think, Khalid, if this is going to be exhausting. But I think here we go. So I think if you'd be so kind, is that when we're referencing provide funding for again, we just copy and paste. You can do that tomorrow if that's fine, to make this more efficient for you, Khalid. Is that fine? I just wanted the committee to be able to see where we have this, and if the committee is pleased, and thank you, Jessica Morris, for that commentary, and all of us working together. Just, you have that, just make sure we're attaching the tracking codes with our statement. And I think that will help. Jessica Elliott.
Nilsa, is your handled?
Oh, no, sorry. Let me take it down.
Okay, just wanted to make sure so I didn't cut in front of you. Yeah, and Khalid, I integrated the tracking codes in my in our statements for environment, open space, and parks, and I'd be happy to help you on this if you need help. But I think all of the comments in this current one that we were looking at still make sense, and if the chair agrees, then I think we can add Jessica's comment and move on.
Okay, thank you, Jess. All right, what was that one you just passed? Sorry, that was Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
Okay, so I would love you all's help with this. This is my first year doing this. We didn't have any comments on the floor from any committee members for the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. And looking at what we wrote last year, it was all directly related to pest control. And yeah, so can we add some stuff now, or what do you suggest? Like, how do we do this?
If there's stuff you'd like to add, absolutely. That's the word. This is
okay.
This is yeah.
Okay.
So is there an area you'd like to add additional when it comes to our request to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene?
Yeah, let me pull up the tracker on my other window. Give me a second, because I wanted to
sure.
pull up. There was a specific request too that we made that was really specific to cleanup, street cleanup, and I would like to emphasize that, because I think the response was, if I'm remembering correctly, was something to the effect of, we will address this within existing resources. So I just kind of wanted to just double down on that, if we could.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay. I have it in. I'm sorry, y'all. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull up my windows. I know it's late. Okay. Yeah, I had them highlighted. Cool. Okay. Department of Health and Mental Prevention, spread of HIV, not that one. The agency will accommodate this. Okay. Interventions on homeless and substance abuse in parks. Okay, so this may be one of them. Would it help if I read off the tracker number for you,
Yeah,
Khalid, later? Okay. It is 311-202-412 E as in Eric. Yeah, this was other programs to address public health issues requests, explore alternative interventions for homeless and substance abuse in parks, including Marcus Garvey and Randall's Island For example, contracting local community-based organizations to station a trained mental health worker in Marcus Garvey Park to provide assistance when necessary. I would love to just double down on how imperative it is to have mental health workers who can be on site, who are, more able to, be in parks and places where people are where homeless and mentally disturbed people may be congregating. Do I need to have the correct language, or can y'all like take what I'm saying and make sense of it?
Yeah, I'm gonna need help with that.
Okay,
So,
cool. No problem.
all right, where would you like that statement to be? Because we already have like 2 paragraphs here. Would you like that to be, and they're both basically about
No,
the
no,
radical.
no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is all rat control. Yeah, I mean, and that's another question I was gonna ask. Are we leaving all of that pest control stuff in? Not that we got rid of the rat problem, but just wondering, should we put what we're about to say on top of the rat control stuff or what? I don't know. Like,
You're on
what's
mute,
more,
Xavier.
just wondering what I don't know.
yeah, sorry, I didn't realize it was muted, Isaac. Yes, it should go on top. And thank you, Jess, for that note. And I think if the rat issue, which was a larger request last year, and that was more what it was commented, this is again just a like a foundation level that if we don't have any comment, so now we're actually giving a comment. So we may actually redact and just remove that with the rat stuff if we're just gonna comment. So again, this was just to get us rolling. So in this case, given the okay, so how do we want to draft this?
We can
yes, you had your hand
keep.
raised and then,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was just gonna say we can keep the first part of that. We urge the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to redouble its efforts or to seriously not consider, but like prioritize the request for alternative interventions that are in the form of mental health workers who can be on site, who are I don't know what you would call them, not on site, off site workers. Well, I don't know what they would be. People who are yeah. Yeah, okay. Here's the department to not read, I guess, not read, yeah, redouble its efforts to prioritize our requests for alternative interventions, off-site intervention, health agents, specifically in, do we want to name Marcus Garvey Park and Randall's Island again? Yes, I think we do.
Yeah, I think any of those areas. Let me go. Jess, do you have a recommendation for language on this?
I was just going to ask if I wrote in the chat if we have any recent letters of support that specifically address the mental health crisis that we can just pull language from.
I feel like the statement the district needs has a lot on there that we can use in this respect. I remember adding a lot to it too, so I know we can use some of. It's very like, yeah. I don't feel like it would be different than what we said in there.
Okay. Nilsa, did you have some language to recommend as well while Khalid looks for that statement district needs language? You're muted, Nilsa.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies. I know we talked about potentially getting rid of the rat language now that we're having commenting, but I want to bring our attention back to the fact that we're going to have a lot of new construction in this community. And so I think it definitely should be pared down. I think that Isaac is absolutely right in what he's saying. The mental health has to be the driver and everything else. But I think that we need to keep at least some kind of language in there, maybe a paragraph or half a paragraph, especially with the new construction, the multi-service center, the sites that are going to be built on 106 and so on. Just because that is a huge problem.
Agree. I agree.
Thanks.
All right, good. David? You're muted, David.
Nilsa,
can-
can you mute?
All right, David, you had your hand raised? Okay, here we go. Right there, pretty close. And the next paragraph is pretty good too.
Can we just take them both?
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to join on my computer now so I can see that a little better.
Recording in progress.
Okay. The city should establish citywide crisis intervention program. Yes. Yes, I think both of these should go. If it's okay. And yeah.
David, are you able to unmute and open up your computer? I see your hand raised.
You hear me?
Yeah, got a little feedback.
Yeah, let me mute. You hear me now?
Yes.
Better. Okay. So, pull up the youth and education. Why can't I swap the fucking screen? Yeah, Apple and Zoom is not making it. Okay. So in terms of the pre-K and that stuff, I mean, I don't know if we need to keep it. You know, it's one of the things they say they fund. We underutilize in this neighborhood spots. I would reiterate that the mental health needs of youth has increased since COVID, and that there needs to be more money put in through both DOE for mental health services as well as Department of Health. Why can't I get this bigger? Oh, I lost it. The school facilities, you know, I mean, that's an ongoing issue. And like, you know, as Khalid read the different departments, you know, there's so many different departments we have to go to in terms of just getting things fixed in the school. You know, you want technology, you don't go to school construction authority. They, you know, you got to go to a different division. Then you need computers, you got to go to a different part. So I think we got to keep all of that. What's interesting is some of the schools that recently presented are schools that were built in the 50s and 60s that still don't have the capability of electric, yet alone some of the schools that were built in the 1920s, right? So we still have those that we should keep as major. I would just more so add a sentence also about the workforce development for youth. You know, SYEP, and this is where it always gets tricky. They always say they expand it, and they do. But we keep asking more specifically for the work, learn, and grow programs or the year programs that are not just associated with the summer. Kids need work during the winter as well. And those are the work, learn, and grow. And they only usually give about 10%. So I would increase a statement that we would want opportunities for youth working and learning career opportunities for youth through the Work, Learn, and Grow program during the school year. Boom. But I mean, it's the same pretty much stuff.
Okay.
We only chop off like a pebble of the iceberg. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we get one school done, but then there's still the other 5 schools that still need the things just as much.
Okay.
You know, I would also highlight, and we're supposed to wait for a presentation where they're going to get funding, hopefully, to get the pool fixed in our neighborhood. And I forget 145 or 146, I think it is, the school. You know, that was a presentation at Dr. Christie.
I remember. Okay. Thank you, David. That's very helpful. I just want to keep us moving along, and we can grab those.
But other than that, everything pretty much stays the same.
Okay.
You know, we don't want to not say the 3K and pre-K because they still cut a program last year that we had to advocate to get them their slots back. Borican Health Center with the youth.
That's right. Okay.
The mental health is really out of control with youth right now.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, I think it's just a study where I heard this weekend, where suicide, and particularly teen girls, are even at a higher rate than they have been in the past. You know, and it was just that situation with the bullying. And what I think is even interesting too, you know, just since nobody else is talking, is the cyberbullying is really taking on. It's like, it doesn't escape it, right? You get bullied by that bully, you go home, you still feel it, but when you're online, you're still seeing it and you can't escape it.
It's true, David.
Maybe that's
I
some of the stuff
agree.
we should
And-
think about in the youth symposium that we're talking about doing. So,
Yeah.
you know, Xavier, even when you mentioned the youth symposium, it made me think more. And I was talking with Ashley yesterday about maybe starting with DOE in District 4 and going to our middle school and high schools and doing like a civics workshop with kids on what are community boards, you know.
David, can you hear me?
We can move on unless you
Can you?
want me to
Yeah,
entertain.
can you
I'll
hear
entertain
me?
them too.
I don't think, David, you can hear me. Can you hear me? David? Can everyone else hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Yes.
can. Okay, David. All right, let's move along, guys. I really want to be able to. And you, Khalid, you can just grab tomorrow morning the tracking codes. If you want to jump on real quick in the morning, we try to do it once over. That's fine. I just want to let's get these comments. Bear with me. And there'll be a post-mortem on this one for sure, but Health and Hospitals, Housing Authority, Department of Youth and Community Development. What was with that last year? We don't have to comment on every single one, but I just want to double check.
Well, that was also like what I talked about with the work, learn, and grow. You know,
Yeah.
that was one of our asks. Expand after school programs. You know, an interesting concept, and this is just one for thought. I'm not going to fight that battle now. Is that the summarizing is great, but not every kid needs to be in summer school to participate, and some should really participate in just summer camp.
There is no statement for DCYD, by the way.
Okay.
CYCD.
Okay, there's nothing there from last year. Well, we kind of commented on it and it indirectly. So we already hit that. Let's go to hold on. Health and Hospitals, Housing Authority, MTA. Those are the and then Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. So,
Crazy dog.
and then it'll be you, Isaac. NYCHA.
I'm sorry. What did you say? Which one?
Oh, when we hit Health and Hospitals, when we get that popped in,
Okay.
populated. Yeah. So just.
Can I make a point of inquiry while we're copying and pasting?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thanks. I know sometimes and this is a silo busting comment, which is always never has a clean answer. Our committees don't, strictly align with agency land. And I know sometimes committee focus and topics that are a priority mean that some agency assignments maybe don't get the airtime or the outreach needed. And that may be something to take up with, and maybe I'll get a cup of coffee with Stephanie and inquire. It's something that Jason probably knows really well. But there, there's gaps that I think result from the need to work through this in our committee silos and then parse it back out into agency-based silos. And that's concerning when there's real needs that are probably getting overlooked because of those buckets that don't align, similar to the redistricting issue that.
Yeah, so to that, and I think that's definitely an interesting postmortem conversation that we can pick up, and I appreciate the commentary on it. I am all about trying to make the process more efficient. And we all have to do that together. Every board's different. Not every board has the same committees that we do. And when I've shown up to meetings virtually, they're like, oh, you don't have this committee on your board? I'm like, no. And they created it specifically because of a carve out action item they had to deal with. And it's very similar with our state and city governance, and even right down to the federal. So there is, and that's incumbent upon the chairs of those committees to liaise and talk with one another. And that's why we have it even on the Statement of District Needs and Budget Committee, and those vice chairs working together as well. And we're improving the process. And so thank you. Okay, John, you see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, given our request, I know NYCHA was up there. So is there any comments you have?
Oh, it's, I mean, this says just about everything. The only complaint I really have is there are some developments, not all, that they have security problem, because the original plan for putting in new doors and a new intercom and lock system has basically gone by the wayside because the vendor that was supposed to do it went out of business. So, and I have no idea when they're going to find a new one. But the thing is that but security is a major concern.
Thank you. Security should be the highest priority. It's right there. It's highlighted by Khalid. The highest priority. Are there any other comments on this? And we'll grab those particular.
This is fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's great to put on to put on it for this year.
Okay, thank you. All right, where was the health and hospitals? Oh, we had MTA that, wait. Health and hospitals, what do we do with that last year?
Yeah, we should go with what we had last year. I don't think we even made any requests to them.
Did we?
I don't see any on the tracker.
You don't with health and hospitals?
No.
Okay, then we can leave that one alone. Thank you for checking on that.
Yep.
All right, we can leave that one alone. Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. And the MTA, yes, we're still wanting that Second Avenue subway. Okay, any comments on this? Jess?
I just think maybe we could add a quick sentence about how we expect them to work with us through this process over the next couple of years, and include, give time and space for the community to weigh in and be included in the process.
Okay, I like that. Toward the end of the paragraph?
Yeah, where do you want that, Jess?
Sounds good. End of the paragraph.
Okay, say that again, please.
I don't know if I can. The community board 11 asks that the MTA continue to work with the community board and its partners to allow for the appropriate time and sorry, my boyfriend's playing video games in the background. Community board and its partners to allow for the appropriate time and input from the community for a successful result. I don't know. Does that make sense? Happy to change it anyway. Just making it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words right now on that one. For a successful, another word for a successful implementation.
This is
Yeah,
no,
Nelson.
are you saying I can't see where the additions are? So I'm sorry, all of you know I'm blind. Um, but we're looking to, okay, so it says, the MTA continues to work with the community as part to allow for the appropriate time and input appropriate time and extensive dialogue or something with dialogue, right? Like exchange of ideas or dialogue with from the community for successful implementation of stated goals or you know you want them to talk to us about what they're planning, and then you want us to have enough time to respond. So
How about this, of the successful implementation of the aforementioned goals or aforementioned projects?
Yeah, I like aforementioned goals. And I think those were great changes. Thank you, Nelsa.
well,
Great.
I just muddle along. You guys are the ones with you guys are the wordsmiths.
We all do. Okay, if we're all fine with that, what else remains? Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, did we have any commentary on that last year?
I don't believe so. I don't see it in here.
Okay. And nothing in within our request other than requests for, so I think that's a little bit okay. Scroll down, please. This is the calendar, public library, school construction authority.
I don't think we have anything in here either for school construction authority.
David, did you and the committee have any conversation on that? Did we lose David? No, he's there. David?
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Was there any conversation about the
What did you
school
ask,
construction
Xavier? I'm sorry.
authority? What was there any conversation at committee on the school construction authority?
Well, I mean, again, it never seems like the things that are always presented are the things that always get done. And I think, again, we're always subjected to their priority lists. And sometimes while we may think some things are high priority, unless it's a 1 or maybe a 2, it just doesn't get done. So, I mean, but they're forthcoming. They meet both with the CEC and community board. Again, it's really learning how to navigate which agency in DOE you need to get something done.
If we pull up the register from our requests.
So we had quite a lot of requests. Some got funded, some didn't. Last year we did better than this year.
Xavier, this is Nelsa. In terms of if you're putting a general statement, right? I'm not sure if we have, a lot of requests. But do you want to mention of a general statement about the school construction authority? We urge the school construction authority to fully fund projects promised in the community, including the 96th Street project, which is to house 3 high schools, like ECF, right? Or is that
Right,
different? Is
no,
that different? That's the school construction authority.
That's not school construction authority.
Okay.
That's
All right,
right.
That's somebody
CSA
else.
or whatever. Yeah. No, that's not CSA. It's
So it's SCA, isn't it?
It
Just
is
No,
SCA, yes,
Yeah.
Melissa, yes.
Yeah.
It is. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit tired. Notification kind.
Because don't forget, they came to us and said that they were going to see if the city can fund, right? That they were having a conversation. And then when we pushed back, then she said that they will fold it back into the project.
Right.
right? And so
Yep.
the school construction authority should not delegate their responsibility to this community for those high schools to another organization, which Jennifer Maldonado stated that they would take it back. But the funding is in question because we do not need them to take funding away from another project that's slated in East Harlem to now fill the gap for this one.
Right. Right.
Right, I say as well as maintain previous agreements on priority capital projects.
Right, because remember, she also said even if they didn't put those 2 schools in there, they still were going to build schools. And it's like, well, what are you building schools and not going to put people in there? Or what schools are you going to put in there? Like, again, we just got the presentation that they're switching, young women's leadership, right?
Mhm.
For a transitional high
anyone-
school.
Yeah, I think background with just this one is just I don't know if we have any history we can put into it. It's as it relates to our. Does anyone else have comment on that? Nilsa, is that an old hand?
Yeah, it was an old hand, but in terms of Jessica Morris has a comment, which are always really good comments. But when you says maintain previous agreements on priority capital projects, I think it's important to specify at least one example of the project in question. And the one that's really important right now for us is the 96th Street project. And I'm sure that Jessica will improve some of the narrative on this, or at least give us more input. So with that, I am going to put my hand down and mute myself.
Jessica, you wanted to offer some comment?
Yeah, I just want, I want to echo Nilsa, and David, sorry to cross silos here, but I think this is a well understood land use discussion, but doesn't correspond to a budget item because it's a promise that we don't quite understand where that is coming from.
No. But you know what, Jessica? It was a promise made contingency on us as a board extending the variances. So it was contingent, or we wouldn't have approved it as a board. And youth and education did not have a formal presentation by them. So yes, this is an issue.
It just to underscore how important it is, I think, to address it, the ECF commitment to capital funding for the construction of schools by school construction authority. I mean, I think this is
right, but we should not pass it off to the city. The agreement was not made with the city to build the schools or fund it. The agreement was that the developer would provide this. And like I said, when they came back and said they're going to build the schools anyway, but they don't have money for them, well, who are they building the schools for?
No.
Or is this part of the expansion for charter? See, this all raises the other issues.
And perhaps I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that.
So guys, the back and forth, I think right now, is this the comment we want to land on? And again, because in the interest of time, this is from the committee having these comments. And Jessica, I appreciate you weighing in, but this is for the committee, and I just okay.
Right,
So,
but see, this affects a whole bunch of committees, Xavier. And again, youth and education.
David, I completely understand, but the point of why we're having to do this now is because other committees didn't look at the register and then assess it, and then that didn't enable Statement of District Needs and Budget Committee to do its role. And so then it falls on executive, otherwise we abdicate. And I think that we've combed through quite a bit this evening and hacked it up. And I think Khalid's going to have a lot to do in the morning with making sure the codes align, double checking if it makes sense on behalf of us. Okay. Are there any other comments from the committee with this? We'll have to figure out in the right language for capital projects such as those schools that were supposed to be maintained?
Just put a note in the chat that I think clarifies it.
Is the agreement with the education construction fund. All right, something as simple as that is fine.
Right. It should be
Agreements.
the construction fund. Still got money to build the building.
And we can look up those school projects, the names of them, Khalid, and just add them in at the end, so we have a reference point. You can put, you know, at XYZ, whatever it is. Okay, that covers everything here. Khalid, I'll be available tomorrow if you want to jump on real quick. And I know you're going to grab the tracking codes to put where it's relevant. If you see any anomalies, please let us know. For committee members, any other comments? Jessica Elliott?
Just great job to Khalid, and thank you for, you know, pulling the weight of our community board. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Nilsa?
I just wanted to thank Khalid and thank all of you. And I think what was done tonight should be the starting point for the committees for the next statement of district needs and budget, so that they have something to work from the previous comments and they can add to those comments, and then they can at least submit that in a Word document or in a form that can just be cut and paste. Because if we did it, there's no reason that the committees couldn't have done what we just did tonight.
Yeah, there is an established workflow process that has evolved from the very first time. And then when I chaired that committee, and then Jason took over and he worked with Carly, and there's a whole process. And for whatever reason, it did not entirely go to plans. But again, the buck stops with us here at this committee. All right, Khalid, I'm gonna move us along in the agenda if you don't mind. And we can I'll leave you to do that. We can circle back and if you want to ping it across, have a last set of eyes on it. I'm sure Jess wouldn't mind as well taking a look. Okay, last bit was new. I just and it was on mine, and I spoke about it at the beginning. How many of you would be willing and available to meet in person for executive committee in March? So willing is the first question. You can just raise your hands. Okay, and it would be at the board office. So looking at doing that, yeah. David, would I presume you'd be willing to meet in March in person?
I've been live since 2020. You know, we meet.
Copy that. Okay, good. I'm inclined to do that so we can be more familiar in the room. And again, if we're able to be, you can lower your hands. And on the it will help us get reacquainted and understand our moments when we stammer, when our body language, we haven't been able to be around one another and to feel comfortable enough to discuss things. And again, the other thing I'd like to encourage chairs that are obviously when you're chairing your committees, most of you are on camera. Next full board, let's make it a practice and set it by example and just have our cameras on. If you have to step away, go to the restroom, take care of your child, you know, just that's an obvious reason to step away, right? If your blood sugar is dropping, you need to eat some food. Obviously, you can go off camera for that. But so they start seeing us lead by example. So that's what I'm going to ask us to do. There's no new business.
Wait, Chair, sorry, before you go forward, I only wanted to know, did you have to finalize a vote on the letter before, you know, just to make sure?
Yes, I will entertain. So we should just thank you very much. I'm sorry. I apologize, everyone.
No worries, no worries.
With the letter, we should entertain a motion to accept the letter as drafted, except for where we need to make grammatical corrections, adding in tracking codes, or if there's any conflict that that we approve it as is with those exceptions. I will entertain a motion for that. Nilsson,
I make a motion to accept the draft letter, committee, the statement of, the mayor's preliminary budget, with any attendant changes, any additions, or any other factors that need to be added in to make it a cohesive draft document.
all right, so we have a motion on the table to accept the changes of the letter in response to the mayor's prelim budget with all necessary changes that may be required to make it a coherent budget or response. Is there, John Green, you had your hand raised. Do you wish to second?
Yes, I do. I second.
Okay, if you can just call the roll, please, real quick, Colleen.
Sorry about that. Okay. Jose Altamirano, still not present. Stephanie Arroyo, excused. Adem Brija,
Yes.
thank you. Jessica Elliott,
Yes.
thank you. David Giordano,
Yes.
thank you. John Green.
Aye.
Marissa Mack, I think she said that she's had to leave. Nilsa Orama,
Yes.
Xavier Santiago,
Yes.
Isaac Scott,
Yes.
Jason Villanueva,
Yes.
thank you. Marking you present. And Michelle Wilson Clement, excused. The motion carries, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Any new business? Nilsa, you have new business? You're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I'm not
Old
su-
business.
I'm
Old
not
business
su-
side.
well, it's not old business, it's new business. I just had a quick question. Are we in new business or in old business?
Old business, but if there's no old business from the committee members, then new business. Do you have new
Okay,
business?
so this is, I guess this straddles old business and new business. There's been a discussion about enforcement against the illegal shops that are selling cannabis and cannabis products. So now the new business part is that I noticed that there's a new shop that opened up across the street from where I live. And I'm just wondering if we can put on our agendas, like a further discussion, not for tonight, on how we as a board will look at new shops that are coming in. Will we just make a notation of it? Will we like people to let us know when they see something crop up so that we can have more of a sense of how many of these shops are actually cropping up in our community?
Yep, I like that. And in fact, we could probably put something out in our newsletter, putting and maintaining something in our sandbox, like our G Drive, where we have a running list in a folder. I think that'd be great, and we can all report back. And that's the purpose of that. And then we can reference it during our meeting. So thank you, Nelson.
Okay.
Okay. All right, good. I have no new business from other committee members. Jessica, you had a question?
I do. It's something that I'm wanted to bring up quietly before bringing it up at the committee level and beyond. I'm not sure, and I'll keep it very brief because it is a far out proposition, statement, idea, consideration. But just because it's far out doesn't mean it's not potentially feasible or worth consideration. For those of you who may be aware, a Madison Square Garden has a permit that's expiring in June. City Council will vote on whether to extend or renew. They, per zoning, are not allowed to do what they do where they do it. And there is a lot of money being put into improvements, transit-oriented improvements around the garden, but it's been acknowledged that the garden's in the way. And for some time, sort of discussions about new locations for Madison Square Garden that would be potentially accessible and viable within Manhattan. The far west side is one that comes up a lot, Hudson Yards specifically, but Uptown Grand Central is a place and a place with significant amount of transit-oriented investment. And from a footprint perspective, with regard to taking Boston's TD Bank North Garden, which is built on top of quote North Station, and plunking it at 125th, 124th, 25th and Park, that is a footprint-wise a viable location. So just throwing it out there for consideration if that's something that the community, as far as a land use, with a lot of points of question beyond that, of course, would play out. If that's something that would support the community-oriented goals with regard to economic development and culture in the district. I'm not looking for an answer, but I just wanted to put it out there here in a safe space with some folks who know the area very well and know how far out that may sound, but also recognize that creative problem solving is a very real set of considerations when you have so much in play in the northern.
That's an interesting proposition, Jessica, and I'm sure Jason and land use would love to respond at some point and have a chat. Jessica Elliott, and then
Just
we'll
just a suggestion to reach out to Russell. He has quite a lot of experience and thought on this very subject, and then bring it to land use. Great.
All right, good.
Bring them
Excellent.
next
Thank you,
uptown.
everyone. Wonderful. I'm just gonna we don't need to do a roll call, but I'm going to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, we'll do affirmation.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The meeting's adjourned at 9:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Khalid. Have a good rest of your evening.
Good night.
Everyone.
Everybody.